And I am a year one induction candidate. So a little bit about myself, I actually graduated from CSCB in 2021 with my bachelor's in kinesiology. And 2022, I graduated with my master's in special education from Hawaii International University. I spent 1 year substituting at various schools within the Delano Union School District. I mainly subbed in classrooms for moderate to severe students. And this is currently my first year co-teaching as a high school special education teacher at Wonderful College Prep Academy. So at Wonderful College Prep Academy, we actually have a special education room, and we share that room. The thing I like about that room is that it's such a safe space for our students with disabilities to complete their work as well as ask for help in either their academics or personal life. Currently, I am the junior special education teacher, so all my students on my caseload are juniors, and they all have a specific learning disability, with some of them having a secondary disability in speech or another health impairment. So the first project I had to do within my year one was a peer observation. So since I am co-teaching, I use one of my co-teachers, Mrs. Ramirez, who teaches consumer math. So I mainly focus on CSCP 2.6 with her, which revolved around employing classroom routines and procedures, norms, and supports for positive behavior to ensure a climate in which all students can learn. So what I did was I observed her how she started in the beginning of the school year. What was her routines? What routines did she implement in her classroom? So what she did was she would put do nows, she would have a timer, she would greet the students, she would have the rules posted on the board so students were aware of what they had to do, and she would constantly be reminding them as students entered. So it became sort of a habit. And since I do small groups within her classroom, that's something I want to implement myself and when I work with the small groups. So these are some strategies I utilized. I did use cue cards that had rules and procedures, kind of have some words of encouragement, as well as partners A's and B's. And I would also pull up a timer on my phone while students worked on practice problems. And overall, my strategies worked within my small groups, even though I would switch different groups. So it wasn't very consistent, but the students expected that I'm gonna have my cue cards, I'm gonna have my timer, and we're gonna have the practice problems. So it did go very smoothly. The second thing I had to do was planning for my first lesson. But since I am a special education teacher, what I would do is I would take a lesson from math, because I mainly taught in math classes, and I would implement what I learned and work one-on-one with the student. So this one I focus on CSCP 1.4 here, so using a variety of instructional strategies, resources, and technologies to meet students' diverse learning needs. So accommodations are a huge role in classes and IEPs, especially with students with learning disabilities. So I implemented my students' accommodations to help him with this math problem. So overall, I would constantly be checking in with my students, give him visual presentations of the formula. I would do frequent checks of understanding. I'll make him have a calculator. We will work stuff out on the whiteboard just to ensure that he was understanding. And I would break the problems into smaller chunks for him to understand. And that's something that worked very well with him on our one-on-one session. So here's some evidence. I did use a number line, and I also uploaded a video. And some of my mentors' feedback was very resourceful, because he did tell me he saw how important accommodations are when implemented to students when working on their math assignments, especially within a general education setting. Accommodations are so beneficial, especially for students with learning disabilities, since they have a slower processing delay, and it just helped my student overall to see to achieve his goal in trying to figure out the problem. For lesson 2, I actually worked on CSCP 3.3, which revolved around organizing the curriculum to facilitate student understanding of the subject matter. So this was also a one-on-one session. And for this, I actually connected my student's interest in his career, wanting a career in welding, with the formula. Welding deals with a lot of angles, triangles, squares, rectangles, figuring out the measurements and distance between one side to the other side. So it was very beneficial to my student when he saw how the distance formula in math connects with welding. So at first he didn't understand the content. He had very vague memory of it. But once I started utilizing the graph to show him how we find the distance to make sure that we have a right angle, as well as how can we measure the sides so that all sides connect equally. Just like right here in this image right here, he saw and understood the problem. He's like, okay, I know how to solve it. I know what sides are A, what sides are B, what's my hypotenuse. And he understood basically how important right angles are, especially in welding. I showed a little image of how if something is not to a perfect angle, or if you don't calculate the distance right, he's gonna have a very misshapen metal piece that he welds. So my mentor did like that. I was actually referring to the lesson, the target, basically the goal, that this is the goal, this is what we have to do. I would also constantly be asking my student, what's next, once I saw that he understood the content. So I was constantly checking for understanding, but I also didn't want to push him by saying like, oh, this is correct, like giving him that answer, because I want him to build that self-esteem and confidence to move forward on his own. So this is some of the next steps I did take. So it was basically the same thing I was talking about, that I wanted my student to move forward with the rest of the problems on his own once he understood, to kind of build that self-esteem, that his self-confidence, that he could do it on his own. He doesn't need me there to constantly be telling him that he's correct. So for my end of year reflection, I did attend 3 professional learning opportunity. One was for core instruction for students with disabilities, which was a training at KCOS. And we also have monthly special education professional development meetings. And here we usually have different members attend specific KCOS trainings, and they would give their own presentations about it. So the ones that pertain specifically to IEPs for students with learning disabilities, that typically goes under dyslexia. Creating meaningful IEP goals, that's huge, because we need to make sure that our goals are measurable, attainable, and that other members in the IEP understand it. I also got to attend a touch math training. So a lot of people don't know what touch math is, but touch math is very beneficial for students who have intellectual disabilities, autism, as well as are nonverbal. Touch math makes math easier, and that's one of the greatest things I learned about touch math. So some of my growth goals, my successes were I decided to focus on element 1.4, because my big thing was, how can I use accommodations? How can I implement them in a gen ed setting, as well as how can I implement them in my one-on-one sessions? And I was able to demonstrate to not only my other special education teachers how implementing accommodations benefited my student, but I also got to demonstrate it to the gen ed teachers, because they received copies of accommodations for each student, and then they could see how beneficial it is to students and how much of an impact it could have on their academics. So next year, since I will be entering my year 2 as an induction candidate, I do want to be focusing on CSP 6.1 to improve my teaching practices with constant reflections and feedback from my supervisors, so that I can finally achieve my clear credential. So I'm really hoping on moving forward in the induction program, and I just can't wait for year 2. And that's the end of my slides. Thank you.